Not
Walter, we're
a
on.
good thing.
No. Oh, we should just keep going. Not quite.
7 o'clock.
Pardon?
7 o'clock.
We're on.
We're on? Okay.
Sam, so you don't take care of yourself, because I did something.
I think you need a day off, Pete.
All right, Joe, we're calling the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. Larry, you want to start the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence, please. Okay. So we connected, Greg, with Mike.
So I have to mute, when they speak, I have to mute your mics. When you guys speak, I have to mute their mics, so they have to bear with me.
Okay, so let's have people from Mahoney and Sobel start. Audio.
Right?
Who's talking?
Oh, the volume is maxed out. We just tested the volume just 5 minutes ago.
Is he muted or?
Ah, they changed mics. Here we go. Be good. Now.
Testing.
Yep.
We can hear you now, Michael.
You can hear me now. Perfect. All right. So thank you very much again. I just want to thank Greg, the mayor, and the board members and council members for accommodating my situation tonight. Hopefully we'll be able to make do. I will go through the audit presentation as I have in the past. I will pause at the end of each section to give you an opportunity to ask any questions. I know that may be difficult based on the logistics, but we will get through it. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully everyone can see the presentation. Okay. I'm going to cover the scope of work, the audit reports that were issued. I'll provide some overall financial highlights, and I will make our required communications. Again, I will try to pause after each section just to give you the opportunity to ask any questions. In terms of the scope of work, again, no changes as far as the scope of work from prior years. So we did do an audit of the town's financial statements. That audit was performed in accordance with both the auditing standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, as well as the government auditing standards issued by the Government Accountability Office. In addition, based on the level of federal and state funding that was received and expended by the town, we did also perform a federal single audit in accordance with the Uniform Administrative Requirements and a state single audit in accordance with the State of Connecticut Single Audit Act. We also perform an agreed upon procedures on the end of school year reports that are required to be submitted by the school district to the Connecticut Department of Education. In addition to those assurance services, we do also provide some non-audit services for the town. So again, we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, as well as the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, state financial assistance, and the related notes. We also assist in converting the town's governmental fund financial statements to your government-wide financial statements. In order for the firm to be independent and be able to provide these services, again, management does need to oversee these preparation services and ultimately accept responsibility for them. And again, Greg, in his position as the finance director, has ultimately accepted responsibility for these services. In terms of the reports that were issued, again, we do issue a number of reports in connection with our audit work. The main report is the report on the financial statements. So we did issue unmodified clean opinions on your financial statements. And again, an unmodified opinion is expressed when we conclude that the financial statements are presented fairly, in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the U.S., and that is established by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Again, just want to make mention that our opinion does provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from a material misstatement, whether due to error and fraud. Again, it does not provide absolute assurance. We do not test every transaction. We do utilize sampling as well as a risk-based audit approach. And so again, we cannot provide absolute assurance, but again, reasonable assurance is still a very high level of assurance. In addition to the report on the financial statements, we also issue a report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting. Again, important to point out in this report, we do not actually express an opinion on the town's compliance with laws and regulations or on the effectiveness of your internal controls. Essentially, during course of performing the audit, if we identify what we consider to be a material non-compliance with a law or regulation, or a significant deficiency or material weakness in your internal controls, we are required under our standards to include in this report. And again, we're not reporting any such matters. In connection with the federal single audit, we do actually issue an opinion on your compliance with your major federal programs. For fiscal year 2021, the total federal awards expended by the town amounted to about $3.5 million. Your major programs that were subject to our testing was the Child Nutrition Cluster and the Coronavirus Relief Funds. Based on our audit work, we did issue unmodified clean opinions on compliance for those programs. And again, we did not report any deficiencies over your internal control over grant compliance. In connection with the state single audit, again, issue a similar report where we issue an opinion on your compliance with your major state programs. For fiscal year 2021, your total state financial assistance was approximately $15 million. The majority of that is your education cost sharing funds, which is not subject to our audit. The portion that was non-exempt was about $2.8 million, and your major programs were the municipal grant aid and the town aid road grant program. Again, issued unmodified clean opinions on your compliance over those programs, and we did not report any deficiencies in your grant compliance. So with that, I'm just going to pause here and just open it up to any questions regarding either the scope of work or the audit reports that were issued.
Anybody have any questions? No questions, Mike. Go right ahead. All right, so the next section goes over your financial highlights. And again, if you go through the financial statements, there is a lot of information that is included in the financial statements. This slide goes over your budgetary highlights. So again, your original budget for fiscal year 2021 planned for the use of fund balance in the amount of $775,000 to balance your revenues and expenditures. Your final budget did include additional appropriations of about $2.5 million. And that was offset by net appropriations carried forward in the amount of $224,000, which again resulted in an overall planned use of your fund balance of about $3 million. Your actual change in fund balance was an increase of about $1.8 million. Your revenues and other financing sources were about $1.8 million more than budgeted. And that was really driven by favorable collections on property taxes, building permits, state aid, police private duty, town clerk fees, and also a significant premium that was received on the issuance of debt. Those revenue surpluses were offset by shortfalls in investment incomes due to the historically low interest rates, as well as transfers in from the other funds, mainly the Waste Management Ordinance Fund, for which the property relief transfer in was not needed because of the overall surplus. In terms of your expenditures and transfers out, those were $6 million less than budgeted. Again, really driven by favorable variances across all departments. Overall, the school district surplus was just about $3 million, which was subsequently transferred into the capital reserve fund. And again, no budgetary compliance issues were identified as a result of our audit work. This next slide goes over your governmental fund financial statement highlights. And again, this includes your general fund on a GAAP basis, as well as all of your special revenue and capital project funds. So the combined ending fund balances for the town totaled about 61.9 million, which was an increase of about 10 million from the prior year. And that increase was really driven by proceeds from the issuance of debt to fund your capital authorizations. In terms of the 61.9 million, the majority of that is in your general fund. The general fund reported an ending fund balance of about 30.4 million, which was an increase of about 1.8 million from the prior year. Of the 30.4 million, 21.4 is considered to be unassigned, and that is sufficient to cover just over 2 months and represents about 20% of your fiscal year 2022 general fund budgetary expenditure appropriations. So again, that falls within the recommendations of the GFOA in terms of a reserve. The town also is reporting about 16.5 million in your waste management ordinance fund. Again, that was an increase of about 2.7 million from the prior year. Your capital project fund is reporting a ending fund balance of about 3 million, an increase of about 2.8 million from the prior year. The special education grant fund had an ending fund balance of about 214,000. That was an increase of about 135,000 from the prior year. And then all of your other funds had a fund balance of about 11.8 million, which was an increase of about 2.6 million from the prior year. Again, there are detailed schedules in the financial statements that show the net position of each of your governmental funds. In terms of the internal service fund, again, that's reporting an unrestricted net position of just over 3 million, which was a decrease of about 353,000 from the prior year. Again, in the prior year, the town transitioned to the Connecticut Partnership Plan for Health Insurance. This fund continues to account for the risk of loss related to dental benefits for which you're self-insured. And again, so there's significant decrease in the activity within that fund. The next portion goes over your government-wide financial highlights. And again, the government-wide financial statements are prepared on a full accrual basis for accounting. So it includes all of your capital assets as well as all of your related debt. The town is reporting a positive unrestricted net position of about 18.6 million. The focus of the government-wide financial statements, again, are really on the town's overall long-term liabilities. In terms of your net pension liability, the liability totaled about 11.8 million, which was a decrease of about 4.8 million from the prior year. And so we saw this across the boards with really all pension plans, where there was a significant increase in the overall funded status because of the significant market gains that were realized during fiscal year 2021. So again, the plan is currently 86% funded as of June 30th, 2021, and that's utilizing an appropriate discount rate of about 6.9%. Again, that compares to about 78.9% funded in the prior year. The overall return on investments was about 18.4% for fiscal year 2021. In terms of your net OPEB liability, again, the town does recognize a liability for retiree healthcare benefits for eligible employees. That's really driven by the school district for which teachers are able to stay on the health insurance plan for the school district upon retirement until they are eligible to participate in the state's plan. The total liability associated with that was about 20.3 million as of year end. That was a decrease of about 200,000 from the prior year. That plan is only about 3% funded. Again, the town did establish a trust in the prior year, but has not been contributing the actuarially determined amounts. So again, you're utilizing a much lower discount rate to value those liabilities. Again, no contributions made to the OPEB trust during 2021, and you're really currently funding that on a pay-as-you-go basis. The other thing I did want to point out is the successful debt refunding. So the town did refund about 15.5 million in clean water notes through the issuance of 12.4 million in refunding bonds, and then also a significant premium that was received on the issuance. So that refunding did result or will result in cash flow savings on your debt of approximately $1 million over the life of the debt. So again, a very successful debt refunding in 2021. I'm going to run through the required communications, and again, then I'll open it up to any questions regarding any of the financial highlights as well as these communications. So the first item here talks about our responsibility under the auditing standards. So again, although we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, they are the responsibility of management. Again, all the information included in the financial statement was provided by the town. In terms of the plan, scope, and timing of the audit, again, no changes in the overall scope of work that was performed or the timing that was originally agreed upon. Happy to report that all of the reports were filed by the January 3rd, 2022 reporting deadline. I do want to make mention, I think, there was over 90 municipalities this year that were on extension. So again, happy that we were able to get the town out by the reporting deadline. In terms of significant audit findings, again, we do review your accounting policies and practices. In terms of changes from prior year, the town was required to implement a new accounting standard. That standard was statement number 84 on fiduciary activities. And so that did result in the recharacterization of certain private purpose trust funds as well as agency funds. So that includes your student activity funds. And essentially the statement kind of clarified what would be considered truly a custodial fund. And one of the driving factors is what is the administrative involvement of the town over these funds. Essentially, if the town does have significant administrative involvement, the classification is supposed to be a governmental fund as opposed to a fiduciary fund. So these funds have always been audited. They're just now being presented a little bit differently in the financial statements. So you will see a cumulative effect adjustment that was recorded in the financial statements, and that did result in an increase in your net position of about $888,000. Required to communicate any significant estimates and judgments. Again, these really are incorporated into the government-wide financial statements and consist of estimated useful lives that are assigned to your capital assets, as well as discount rates that are utilized to determine your net pension and OPEB liabilities. Again, we did review that as part of the audit, and we did deem those estimates to be reasonable and also consistent with what other municipalities are utilizing. I'm happy to report there were no significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit this year. We had no uncorrected misstatements. So again, if we identified an adjustment and proposed it to management and they did not want to report it, we're not required to report it, but we are required to communicate that to you. Again, no uncorrected misstatements. In terms of disagreements with management, happy to report again, there were none. We did obtain a management representation letter. There was nothing unusual that we requested from management. So again, if we were unable to substantiate a transaction that we selected for testing and we were relying on the representation from management, we would be required to communicate that to you. And again, we're not aware of any consultations by management with any other independent accountants. So again, that concludes the overall audit presentation. So I will now opening up to any questions that any of the board members may have.
Diane?
I have one on, let me take this off. Seriously, no? Yeah, okay. I have one on page 9. I'm just wondering if you, if there's a recommendation or a concern about funding the OPEB trust on a pay-as-you-go basis, or whether we should try to draw that down.
You know, I think the recommendation would be to work towards funding any of your other post-employment benefits. By having a trust, you have the ability to generate investment income that could then be used to offset some of these benefits. Again, the majority of the benefits do represent what's considered to be an implicit rate subsidy. So for example, the school teachers that are able to stay on the district's health insurance plan they do pay, or the district does receive 100% of the premiums. But again, there is still an implicit benefit that's given to those retirees by being able to stay on the plan. And so this would just be another revenue source that the town could utilize to offset those benefit payments.
Any other questions? Mr. Mayor, do you have any? Mike, I just have one on the pension discount rate. We're at 6.9. Is that typical for all the other towns that you may be doing this for, or is that high?
So in terms of the discount rate, it's really been between 6.5% and 7%. We really don't see any discount rates above 7% anymore. So again, a lot of municipalities continue to kind of revise that down over kind of a period of time. But again, 6.9 is not out of what we see other municipalities utilizing. In fact, the state is currently using 6.9%, and they just revalued their discount rate for their state teachers retirement plan.
Anybody else have any questions on the audit, any of that stuff? Michael, I think that I want to thank you. I hope everything goes well with your other situation. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. This is Greg. Thank
Yeah.
you for you and your team for the comprehensive work you do, and I can't thank you guys enough.
Well, I will
Get
say
well,
again,
or
thank you.
stay well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're definitely looking forward to getting through this. Again, I appreciate the accommodation. If you do have any other additional questions, because I know this is kind of difficult, feel free to run those through Greg, and I'll make sure I get a response to you.
Thank you.
Greg, I always said I like your stewardship, and obviously, with the mayor, of course.
Well, this is kind of my report card, so, you know, I appreciate
And I know
your
I'm not
support.
seated, but Greg, I always appreciated your
And I
stewardship.
appreciate the comment. Thank you
All right,
very
sir.
much.
Outstanding.
When are you gonna seat him
Oh, my.
for the meeting, right?
Oh, yeah, he's seated, period, for everything.
I seated, you were seated, Mr. Beer. We forgot to tell you.
I'm seated? I'm
I did tell
I
you.
have no idea.
Okay. All right, I guess that's it, Michael. I don't think we need you going forward. You're welcome to hang around if you want, but I think we'll go on with the rest of the Board of Finance meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, we'll be talking to you.
Thank you.
And are you gonna adjourn that one?
Gotta adjourn.
Yes, technically we should adjourn this meeting. So I get a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am going to, does anybody want a few minute break? If not, I'll just call the rest of the meeting to order, our regular meeting.
It's up to you.
Okay, we'll call the meeting, regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order at, what time is it?
7:23.
7:23.
Outstanding. Now, this is my kind of meeting.
We're not done yet. We're not done yet, Mr. Beer.
Okay, let's do the pledge once more and moment of silence. Diane, do you want to lead?
Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is there any public comment? I don't see anyone there, so go on to approval of the minutes from December 8th. A motion to approve is put in by the chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Walter. Any additions or corrections? from anyone? Go ahead, Joe.
My name is spelt with a capital G, D-E capital G. And then there was just a couple of like grammatical things. The bottom of the fourth line, I think it should say they were asking for Lucas devices. It's singular, it should be plural. Firefighter, this first line on the page 2 of 2, gear, I'm not sure the first line, just like, gear are needed to assure firefighters have gear for in case there's something, I don't know. I think you meant to say to assure the firefighters have the gear they need in case of a second call or something like that. I mean, it was in there, it's just a grammatical thing. The line, Mr. DiGregorio asked for the total request and Mr. Bergman answered 311,000. The reason I was asking is because it didn't match with the request that was given to us on the document. So I just wanted to make sure that that's noted in the minutes. That second one, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth paragraph, Mrs. Clafe asked for what the primary capital loan would be used for. That also wasn't noted, and that was discussed in the meeting, that was a TBD as well as the other ones. There were 2 TBDs on the vote. And I think that was it.
Okay.
Those are the only changes that I had noted.
And I notice your name is misspelled throughout the entire document.
Yeah,
It's spelled correctly on who was present, but not the document. So it's a typo, consistent all the way through.
Spell check doesn't like my name. It's okay. I don't take it personally anymore.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions on the minutes? Although,
Motion to accept it with the amendments.
second on Barbara's motion to accept as amended? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain, I was not here.
Okay, one abstention.
Oh, I'm always impressed when somebody reads the minutes, by the way.
Well, thank you. I take my job very seriously.
All right, item 4, the motion from the chair, request to transfer $65,000 from contingency fund number 1098000588900 to legal account number 104139000-53108. And can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Brian Lastra, Town Assessor. This transfer is needed to pay for our appraisal and legal fees associated with litigation that came out of our last reassessment. So if you remember, about a year ago, we completed a reassessment. Then we went through the Board of Appeals in the formal grievance period. And then beyond that, we had 5 cases that were filed in the Superior Court. So we're in the process of defending those with our attorneys and getting appraisals done on the properties. And the $65,000 will get us through this fiscal year in terms of the expenses that are ahead of us.
And the cases will probably extend past this fiscal year, you think?
Yeah, so we've you know,
And
for the
your
budget for next
budgetary
year,
line for the
you know,
next
we
year.
budgeted additional monies, and we'll see where that takes us. So one of the cases is the First Light, both Walkie River and Bulls Bridge. Those are specialized properties. You need the appraisers that are available to do that kind of work are few and far between. So, and of course, they're complicated properties to assess and appraise. So that's where most of the funds are going towards, you know, in terms of our appraisal fees.
Anyone have any questions?
I have a
Go ahead, Amy.
question and a comment. For the contingency fund number, I believe that there's a 0 missing. I looked in the budget. So 1098000058900.
There's 4, there should be 4, you're saying? 4 zeros?
Yes, for internal zeros. Okay. My question is actually, Greg, for you. And thank you for the explanation. You actually answered several questions that I had. there are funds remaining in some of the other legal lines. Is it an option to move it from one legal line to another? Might that be a good option versus contingency? Or
No, because there's been an indicated need for funds within those lines, and we still have half of the year left. So there's no telling, if those funds are indeed available. They may be available now, however, down the line, each department has their own claim on those legal lines, so it would be presumptuous of me to say, hey, they're not gonna need that money, and let's take it from their line item.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or not? All those in favor of approving the motion to transfer $65,000 from contingency to legal?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A motion to review and discuss ARPA funding as follows. Lovers Leap Bridge in the amount of $150,000. Boardman Bridge in the amount of $125,000. COVID-19 town response, $500,000. Waterwich Fire Department, it's an adjustment of $22,147 from previously approved amounts. The VFW/American Legion, $100,000. And in the Milford Ambulance adjustment, $35,524.86. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? And Mr. Mayor, do you want to speak to any of these?
Okay, I'll lower my mask.
Yeah,
6 feet away.
as far as I'm concerned, it's easier.
Thank you. Thank you to the board. Mr. Chair, can you read them off one by one? I'd be happy to give a brief summary and then answer any questions.
Okay, do you want to do this as a group, or you want the mayor to explain it line by line?
I think he asked for it line by line.
Okay, we'll go line by line.
Which is the first
So,
one?
Start with the Lover's Leap at 150.
Yes, sir. So in speaking with former State Representative Jeannie Garvey, she reminded me, though Lover's Leap is a state park, the town actually owns the bridge itself. So that money there is set aside for any kind of maintenance that is going to be needed on that bridge. We've never set aside funds for that. I was not aware that the town was responsible for that until State Representative Garvey told me that. Then I went and I looked back in minutes, and indeed it is. So to me, this is money that would be set aside that we could do for basic maintenance of the bridge.
Mr. Mayor, I'm stunned by that.
So am I.
Whoa. Whoa.
So, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Totally anecdotal. Part of it's anecdotal. The first one is, who cut the locks off the bridge?
I have no idea.
Right? The bridge was like covered with locks for the
Yes,
longest
I know.
time. I assume that was the state that went there and did that.
I have, Joe, I will ask. I have no idea.
Because if they were doing that, that would technically be maintenance, right?
Good point, Joe.
Could have been the part.
Just saying, if they're
Could've-
there doing maintenance,
Yeah.
right? My second question is the less anecdotal one, and I'm assuming that's gonna be an ongoing line item now, right? That $150,000.
Once, the goal would be to assess the bridge.
Right.
And then once we see what would be needed, it would be in our 5-year capital plan, moving forward about what would be needed for that.
Yeah, okay.
But you won't see that in this 5-year capital plan now, because this will be to help with the assessment or any kind of material things we need to do like right now.
Could you imagine?
Take a chainsaw and cut them down. Wow. Oh, my goodness, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Who repaired it? That was a few years ago, right? It wasn't that long that they went through, then they
We got
resurfaced
a grant to do that. Many,
Yeah,
and that was through.
That was a grant,
through-
Lover's Leap.
Yep,
Yeah,
that was through,
Big time grant.
At that time, State
Yeah.
Representative Jeannie Garvey. She actually got us the grant.
And
But when
that
you
was
look
big-
within that grant paperwork, the ownership is,
Yeah, that was big money. Yeah, that was big money.
They bought us off.
Diane?
I saw that Billy Mo Buckby posted on Facebook that the bridge is now closed. Is that correct?
That's the Harrybrook Park Bridge. This is the Lover's Leap Bridge. That's the red
Oh,
bridge that you see, right.
I understand.
It's within
Okay.
within the state park.
I understand, thank you.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, do we want to vote on each one of these individually, or do you want to have the mayor go through each line and then we vote?
Up to you.
I have a question before we vote. There has been a lack of clarity, I think, on the Board of Finance actions on the ARPA funds. So are we voting or not voting? Because there has been discussion over us giving consensus statements, but not having any power to make decisions, which I looked in the town charter, and in section 806A seems different. So can we first just establish what the Board of Finance's role is? Because it seems to change from meeting to meeting.
What I first heard from Randy, and this is months ago, was that we just have the power of saying yay or nay. This is unbudgeted money, okay, which did not necessarily fall within the purview of the Board of Finance. It's really a legislative of action by the town council and the mayor. Like we had the town council invited tonight to hear the stuff. It's the same thing, you know, we're doing that. And maybe I should not use the word vote, but I want everybody's opinion, yay or nay, on this as we go through.
So we are not technically voting then on each of these
Correct.
items? You're just asking for our opinion, is that correct?
I would say,
And
yeah, I would double
consensus?
check with Randy, but I believe that's what was, I know the discussion between Randy, the mayor, and I was in on the email copy of that, and that's, we have a yay or nay, and we could say nay, and what happens is it just, the council just goes ahead because it's going to a town meeting.
Okay, so is there, so that this is not a duplicative process, is there a purpose for us providing a consensus?
Say that again?
Is there a purpose for us providing a consensus? What's the purpose for providing a consensus?
Just that we know about it, where the funds are going.
I think it might be another set of eyes, another bunch of opinions that might be considered. So Joe and I sat on the Charter Commission. We do not have the purview to yay or nay this.
806A is to make appropriations supplemental to those provided in the annual budget, which would be like a, right, which would be like if we were to send out a supplemental tax statement, right? I don't think that this falls under the purview of that.
These are federal funds.
These are federal funds, so I think it's a little bit different. But again, I'm not an attorney, we'd have to consult the attorney on that, but. I don't know, I'm confused as well. I had thought about that.
We're not transferring these funds into the general fund and increasing anyone's line item. These are
Separate grants?
appropriations outside of the general fund budget, and the charter addresses supplemental appropriations with regard to the general fund budget. These are being spent out of a grant fund. They're segregated funds. As these are approved, what I'm doing is assigning a project code to the particular appropriation, and that's how it's tracked. None of these funds are being brought into the general fund whatsoever. There's not any commingling of funds.
To that question, though, I think the next time there's a charter revision, that should be addressed.
Who knew this was gonna happen?
I know, but
Yeah.
you don't until you do, and then once you do, right?
That's the point.
So,
And you were on the Charter Commission last time, and if
I-
the next one we have, if you want to be on it.
I accept full responsibility for not foreseeing the future.
Well,
and
no,
knowing
yeah,
what was gonna
yeah.
happen.
Can't expect everything.
Okay, Boardman Bridge,
The Boardman Bridge, for those that don't know where the Boardman Bridge is, I'm sure everyone does here, right? Does everyone know where the Boardman Bridge is? That bridge is in, as we all know, serious disrepair. We had a Boardman Bridge subcommittee that right now is dormant because they don't have the funding. They did do years ago, a kind of on on a paper napkin, so to speak, a cost. They had a consultant come in but did not a really thorough one. Talked about it being about a $3 million project. Well, now it's many years after that. We want to get somebody to come in and do a real assessment, because the fear is we have to decide as a town, do we want to, redo the bridge, or do we want to take the bridge down? Because the worst thing can happen is the bridge falls into the river, and then you have environmental damages that could cost the town, I don't even know how much. So this money would be earmarked to go in and do an assessment to see what the cost could be. Then we would bring it to the town council and the Board of Finance about what we would need to do.
It's all lead paint on that, Pete, for crying out loud. That's,
The good news now,
and
Walter,
I used to drive across that bridge.
Yeah, I did too, Walter, coming to work
You know,
at New Milford
Walter,
Hospital, the original
but
bridge,
that's
yes.
all lead paint. If that falls down,
yep.
you're absolutely correct.
The good news now is they have, from what I understand, a special paint that's made through nanotechnology. They-
You can
Paint right over- yep.
seal it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I know
Encapsulating.
before a decision is made to repair or take it down, isn't that bridge historical?
Absolutely. It's one of only two bridges, from what Jack Healy told me, our DPW director. There's only one of two bridges like that type of bridge in the state.
1888. But
I
I'm
knew it
not
was the
that old
1800s,
yet,
but I didn't know.
1888.
Now, Walter, I'll just give you my own personal opinion. I think it's a tremendous asset to the town,
Yeah.
and I would hope that we would look
And
at
I
a
think
way
it
to fix it.
connects that parking lot
Sure
to, over
does.
to Saga too, so that would be, a useful, portion for, for the state.
The
Uh,
other
the
little
town.
one can be a little dangerous.
Pardon?
It's the other small one on the other side. Sometimes pulling out of there can be a little,
Oh, the
Yeah.
parking lot, yeah.
little
Oh,
tricky
yeah.
at Sega Meadows.
I'm glad they paved it, pass that on to Jack.
I think it's a smart use of the funds.
Thank you.
Wow. That's a story.
Moving on to COVID-19, town response,
So,
$500,000.
I asked the council that we need to have it, as we're still going through this pandemic. We don't know what could happen. We were told, that this pandemic, once we have vaccines, that it will be over. Well, as we can see, we're still in the throes of a pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if a new variant is going to come out. We don't know. So to me, the prudent thing to do is, with the approval of the town council and the Board of Finance, when we had surplus funds, we were able to put monies aside, both from the Board of Education and the town, to really be a shock absorber, and we definitely needed it on both sides. Board of Ed was able to get computers when other towns were scrambling trying to find it at that time.
Talking
And this,
Chromebooks that
correct.
was
And this
easy to
gives us
do.
that cushion in case we need it. If it doesn't happen to be, it's there, and then we can look to repurpose the funds. But at least we have it as a shock absorber in case we need it, as we keep going through COVID.
I just heard
Go ahead,
earlier today, there's another variant, and the first case in Connecticut is in New Fairfield.
And,
Another one?
Yes, another one,
A fourth one?
yes.
what was I gonna say, there's a cartoon I saw.
You sure?
If the virus doesn't kill you, it'll mutate and then kill you.
Wow.
Was it a Deltacron? Because they were saying people
No,
are getting
it was
both.
a letter and a number of some sort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a subset of Omicron, but they're thinking they may have to give it a Greek letter name. They're
Oh.
not just sure yet. And it's not just in this country, it's the variant is appearing, in several countries already.
I think they should pick. Wouldn't it be better if they just picked like funnier names?
There's nothing funny about it.
I know, but that's the thing, right? Like things that are this
Anyhow,
serious
you-
sometimes need a little levity to make it to lessen the blow. If
Okay.
they named it like the Bambi virus or something. Like,
Joe,
all right.
yeah,
Sorry.
I have a question on this.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, for the COVID-19 town response, with this idea, this would be earmarked to be used in a number of different ways depending on the circumstances.
Correct.
Will there be criteria put in place to ensure that the potential future uses as they come up meet some semblance of criteria for that, or how will that be
In
determined?
COVID response, or if
For COVID
to
response.
answer your, yes. So it would be something that would be of a critical need, whether it be PPE that we would need for townspeople or for first responders. It may be for continuing to fund a vaccine clinic as the state is moving farther away. Could be to help the new health district that we're in, help with COVID testing. It could be a whole, as we don't know what's going to happen as we move forward with the pandemic, it would be pandemic specific, COVID specific.
Okay, and because we have still another year, I believe, with which to earmark the funds, and then obviously time to use them after that, do we need to earmark this 500 now? I'm not opposed to having this shock absorber. I think it's a very good idea, but do we need to go ahead and earmark it since we know we have time?
Absolutely, and I can give you an example. Because we had that ability to use surplus funds for COVID before, the ambulance now is a fully, as you can testify, right? There's no one riding the ambulance as a volunteer anymore. It is now a paid service. So that cost now has moved from $150,000 that we were using for Medic 4, which is a regional one, to now, what you're going to see in this coming budget, you're going to see a $600,000 request. Plus, the ambulance was paying how much was it? $187,000 for the payment, the mortgage payment. They can't pay that any longer. So the town was able to use that COVID shock absorber that we had to pay for that. So we didn't have to go get guess what? Supplemental tax bill. So we were able to have that shock absorber. So I have, and we have, no idea what the unintended consequence is going to happen for the next time with COVID. So to me, I'd like to make sure that we have this shock absorber here in case we have any kind of incident that could really put a financial onus on us.
Got it, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the Waterwitch Fire Department, an upward adjustment of 22,147.
So in that one, when you saw at the previous one, the whole litany of requests that they had asked for, they'd given the council in my office a ton of the invoices. Some of those cut off, so it was only partial, it wasn't the whole one. So when you add them all up in totality, there was a differential, and that's what that is.
So basically, we're dealing with a clerical error.
Correct.
And this corrects the clerical
Yep.
error. I'm going to skip down to Milford Ambulance. It's also an upward adjustment. Is that the same reason?
Same thing.
Same reasoning there? Okay.
Yep.
And then speaking
And
of...
real quick, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chair, if I could, I really want to thank Mr. Tripp, and I want to thank all of the members of New Milford Ambulance for the many, many years that this ambulance has been volunteer. And it's unfortunate that obviously our volunteer base has gotten older at the ambulance. But Donna Heskey and all those guys, including Mr. Tripp, have done a phenomenal job all the way through this. But we are going to be migrating towards more of a paid service down there. So Mr. Tripp, thank you.
And I endorse exactly what the mayor just said, Larry. The VFW American Legion is in the amount of $100,000.
This one here, there's a lot of misconception, so I'd like to set the record straight here tonight on this. Some people think this is a wish thing for a private entity. The VFW helps our veterans, not only here in New Milford, but throughout the area. That building, if we help take care of it, can be a veterans center for the entire region. That would be the goal. I talked to VFW Commander Jim Delancey. We could make that a whole region. We could bring service officers that come into town hall here once a month. They could be there once a week, twice a week, helping them with getting VA benefits, helping them with getting all the resources they need. As we know, we have a tremendous veteran community here, an aging veteran community. I believe our Vietnam veterans are in their 70s and 80s now.
Yes, they are.
And then we have the newer ones that are coming from Afghanistan, coming from Iraq. And we need, my opinion, as a community, to give them the ultimate respect and opportunity to get all the resources they need. And we can do that if we help fund that center. Also, that has a commercial kitchen in it. Partnering with the VFW, we have the ability to help some of our small businesses, as we're going to be doing in the Max, that maybe they start their new business and need a place when they're moving from baking whatever they're baking in their house. Well, now they need to go to a commercial kitchen. Well, guess what? We'll have one over there to help out as well. Also to do benefits for our veterans. I think this is a tremendously good use of the money, federal money, to help our veterans and those that are older. And as we all know, COVID attacks the elderly in a more deadly fashion than it does our younger people. Statistically, it's still a brutal disease no matter who gets it, depending on their own immune system. But to me, I think this would be a tremendous sign to our veteran community that we care.
Here, here, Mr. Mayor, I got out in 1966, so do the math.
Thank you for your service, Walter.
Weren't
I appreciate it. I'm too young to be that old. Don't you put that in the minutes.
Mr. Bear's old, how's that?
Anybody have any questions for the mayor?
And one
on
last
any
thing,
of the
Mr. Chair, if I
stuff?
could make sure to the minutes with Stephanie.
Sure.
There's been a lot of conjecture of, are these uses really ARPA? Do they follow the guidelines? So if you look at the last and final guidance, and I will defer to our finance director, the final guidance, Mr. Ospau, say what?
Says that they give a standard deduction, if you will, if you can look at it in that perspective, that you have up to $10 million in ARPA funding, you can qualify for a revenue loss calculation. It's a standard revenue loss calculation. It used to be a 4.1% based calculation. Now it's a standard deduction or standard of 10 million. So with that in mind, and I spoke to our auditors, and this came down from the state OPM, that all of our funding is now eligible under the revenue loss calculation. So there really is very, very little, if any, restrictions on the spending of this money. We can use it for infrastructure. Obviously, you know, we want to do a broad-based approach to the use of these funds, but under the final decree, $10 million is the standard deduction. It's the benchmark.
And Mr. Chair, I don't know if this would violate your agenda, and please tell me so, but I know Commission Member DeGorio had asked about a previous one, which was the residential loan. And if it's okay with the council, the committee, I'd like to talk about that if I could.
Go ahead.
So
No
we-
objections from the board? No
So we
objections?
have a small revolving loan fund that we got with a steep grant many, many years ago. And what this fund does is, if you have a person that had a one-time life occurrence, and I'm making this up and I hope it falls on no one, but I've seen it happen, or you've had a job loss, or the spouse has had a job loss, or you've had someone within the family pass away, and you've gone from 2 incomes to 1 income. Now, you can barely make ends meet. Now you have a roof damage, or the boiler goes, or the septic goes. You have a few choices to do. One, you can let it go. If you let it go, the house becomes in disrepair, the value of the property goes down, and your neighborhood value goes down. It's death spiral. 2, right? You can try and sell your home, but if you're trying to sell your home with an issue like that, when you go for the appraisal, more than likely, if it's a residential mortgage, they're going to ask you to fix it, unless you're doing an all cash deal. This particular vehicle that we've used in the past successfully would allow that person, right, to be able to fix that property. It would be a 0% interest loan, but would be on title. So once the person sold the home or refinance the home, you then would be able to take that money and put it back into the system and re-help other residents. Torrington actually has a pretty significant fund such as this. I believe theirs is about $11 million now. So they've been able to just keep doing it year over year. So to me, I think this would be tremendously helpful for our residents here in New Milford, especially those that have had a income shortage due to COVID or due to a life experience. So that was the reasoning for this particular fund.
As a group of these ARPA funding lines, is there any objections to any of them, or
I'm abstaining.
you're abstaining? Okay. Joe?
I actually have a question for Pete. I mean, not related to these, but to the loan. And my concern still stands that the problem of getting into the business of being a lending organization, right, is through the administration of the loan and who gets selected for the loan and how much money do they get, and then what happens if we have more applicants than we have the money for, right? And as noble as it might be to have the funds available, and as much as I think that it probably would be a great thing for the community, I'm just not sure that's the business that I would necessarily say the town should be in, you know? I mean, does that get administered then, like through the finance department? Is that something that
No.
falls on the comptroller to like do a credit check?
We
And-
actually are doing it now.
Right.
We're just adding to it. This has been going on for years. There's actually a consultant that the town has used for many, many years, and they're the ones that do all that. They specialize in this exact type of funding.
And then do
Because
they-
it's too, as you 100%, I agree with you, Joe. If this was just going to be a town thing, there's
Yeah.
no way we could do it because they've got to comply with getting 3 bids, who's the contractor is, what the value of it is. It's kind of like doing a FHA 203K loan.
Or even, I mean,
Right.
sometimes even doing like a HELOC or something.
Exactly. So this would be the same person that's doing it as they've been doing it before. The town would not be doing any kind of the legwork with that. We're not sophisticated enough to do that.
Right. I mean, you know, we don't have say in terms of the policy as long as it conforms to the finances, right? My other concern with all of these appropriations, and then you sent out the list, which I really appreciate. You sent out, is that Excel? Can I share that Excel spreadsheet? Is that like?
It's an Excel spreadsheet, that's the one. that
Absolutely.
gave me that.
Like
I
if
did-
someone asked me for it, I could share with them?
Absolutely. It's
Okay,
on the
cool.
town website.
Oh, all right, it's on
Yeah.
the town website, great.
And also, Joe, just so you know, you could add all future
That was my, yeah,
appropriations to that
Yep.
sheet.
I was gonna, can we get the budget that way, the town budget, as a spreadsheet in Excel?
I have enough problems with the budget.
Well, you could just export it as a, whatever.
We just got through with
Anyway.
an audit, now I'm in budget with a
Well,
new
I mean-
comptroller.
Hey, you know, keeping you on your toes. Again, like all the appropriations, again, like there's a lot of great stuff in there, and I think, you know, I mean, it's hard for me to find anything individually that I object to. I still feel like it's death by 1,000 cuts. I'd rather see us fully handle a large project, a large capital project, as opposed to all the little things, right? I mean, you know, again, like, do we need, you know, ambulance upgrades and fire upgrades? Sure, absolutely. All of those things are 100% viable, and I stand behind them. But how much is Boardman Bridge gonna cost? Right? I mean, 2 million, right? I mean, 3 million, 5 million, who knows? How much could repair to Lover's Leap cost? I mean, could we fully renovate Pettibone, right? And turn it into a community center that would have some longer term standing value with the funds as opposed to, 100, 35, 22, 120, 150. Like, I don't know. I'm just taking the opportunity to voice my opinion.
That's okay, Joe. You're still approving what we have here. So everybody's approving except for Amy McStain? Pardon? You have any more questions? Go ahead, Bob.
How does this consultant show up in our budget, or do we use him as an ad hoc, on
Ad
an
hoc.
ad hoc basis?
Yes,
So he only shows up when we need him
correct.
for these? And the loan then at 0 interest is recouped by a lien for when
Correct. So the
house
lien
is
would be
sold?
placed on title, And then whenever the house was either sold or refinanced,
Okay.
then that money would go back into the fund.
But it doesn't get paid, is there an option to pay it back sooner?
If they chose to do that, absolutely.
Most don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, why would you? Why would
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Are you gonna take a vote or just?
Yeah, I'm just asked Barbara, yes, no?
Yes.
Yes, Walter? Joe?
Yes.
Diane, yes, yes, and myself is yes, and Amy's abstaining. Next item on the agenda, Greg, is your finance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good evening all. This is the December financial update. The budget process is progressing as the mayor and I have been meeting with departments to discuss their requests. Those discussions will wrap up this week, after which the mayor and I will be preparing the mayor's recommended budget. On the revenue side, revenues are at 53.6% of budget. On a straight line basis, we would expect to be at 50%. Tax collections are at 57.2% of budget overall, with current taxes at 57.7%.
What was that percentage again? 50?
For the current taxes?
Yes.
57.7.
Thank you.
Both interest income and stiff interest are running at 36 and 27.8% respectively.
Of the budgeted amount.
Of the budget, correct. Most departments are averaging above the straight line calculation with the exception of health, aging, and the max. The effect of COVID-19 has been detrimental to the ambulance's ability to attract and secure enough volunteers to effectively operate at a service level to satisfy demand. As a consequence, the ambulance is unable to subsidize the debt for the ambulance facility this year or any future year. I have not included that revenue source in the budget for next fiscal year. I do expect to cover that shortfall with an excess of revenue from the supplemental motor vehicle line, as well as a reimbursement of a grant for the replacement of inefficient diesel trucks, for which we recently received $108,000. On the expenditure side, expenditures on a cash basis are at 50% of budget. We're right on target. I see no issues with expenditures at this point in time, with the exception of tax rebates and refunds, which are currently at 78.2% expended as of December. I do expect at some point in time a supplemental appropriation will be requested. Unemployment compensation is running significantly under budget with only 3.2% of budget expended. In summary, on a cash basis, revenues are at $56,376,111.26, and expenditures are at $50,078,923.49, leaving the town with a positive cash flow for the first half of this fiscal year of $6,297,187.77.
Once again, Greg, thank you for your stewardship.
I tried.
How does that compare to previous years?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have that data. I don't have that data with me. Now, again, we're going into our second half. We're currently in January, where our second half of tax collections.
Right.
Traditionally, we do collect more money from taxes in the first half of the year because that's when the tax bills go out for motor vehicles. Although in the second half of the year, the supplemental tax bills go out. So we'll pick up a little more on that side. I asked the tax collector what she billed out in the supplemental motor vehicle category, and it was $1.1 million. So if you apply our collection rate of 98.44% of taxes, we're going to probably come close to $1 million in supplemental motor vehicle taxes, whereby I believe 750,000 was budgeted. So we're going to we should receive experience a windfall in that category.
I have a question,
Yes.
related but not really. So, a friend who moved to town recently was talking to a neighbor about the tax, with the car, whatever it's called.
Supplemental?
Thank you, the vehicle tax. This person, I'm not gonna use any names or locations, has been in town for quite a while and received a bill for not having switched her license from one state to Connecticut.
Okay.
And it was somewhere in the $1,000 range. Is that possible?
If they accrue back from when this person actually moved here and they can verify that, it depends what kind of vehicle. It depends what the vehicle's assessed at. If you accrue, say, over 10 years, sure. If you got newer vehicles that you're registering in another state while living here, it's possible. Sure.
Wow.
Sure. Yeah. Look at your motor vehicle tax bill when you get it. What's the value of that for 1 year?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're accruing that over 10 years, sure, it's entirely possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they would prove that by what? Seeing when you purchased your house?
We engage a company that provides that service for us for a fee.
Right.
So, they do their due diligence and they're experts in this field, and they get a vig, if you will, from uncovering these scofflaws, if you will.
Right. Well,
So
I
there's
advised my
Scott.
friend to get her car transferred immediately.
Okay.
Do they check on business people who haven't registered as?
No,
business
this is
people?
exclusively for, I think that's more a function of the assessor's office, okay, for, businesses and personal property. They do audits on occasion, but as far as the motor vehicles, no, this one company is exclusively, that's their forte.
Anybody else have any questions for Greg? Any new business or old business that anyone wants to bring up? And, okay, Walter, you want to continue the tradition? Motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn!
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
This is good.